I found my boyfriend's Reddit account. Will I be a hole to break up over this? I24F have been with my BF25M for 2 years. I have a Reddit account he knows about, usually just posting our cat sometimes and just me looking at memes and lurking other various subreddits. I'm not very active on there, but I know how it works. My BF doesn't have a Reddit account. At least I thought he didn't. He never really spoke about it, and he just uses Facebook or Instagram. I never noticed the app on his phone, but I've never looked in his phone too hard because I never had a reason to. He went to take a shower and he left his phone in the room, and I forgot about a large package he bought, and I wanted to see the tracking on it. I went in on his email to get the tracking number, and I noticed it was a whole different email. It had Reddit emails, and I was confused because he never said he had one. I found out the Reddit app kinda hidden, and I found out what his username was.
I went onto my phone to look up his username, and it was full of body shots and dick pics. It was obviously him. I went to see what comments he had, and they were on OnlyFans subs and women's nudes complimenting them. I was so fucking pissed off I couldn't look any further.
I haven't spoke to him about this, but he can tell that I'm pissed off and keeps asking me what's wrong, but I don't know even I should tell him or not. This happened this morning, and I've just been thinking about this the entire time. I'm thinking about just breaking up with him and getting my stuff and leaving, but I don't know if I'm being too nuclear or overdramatic, but I'm so uncomfortable about this situation. Am I the a-hole?
Am I the a-hole for calling my brother a hypocrite for refusing to come to my wedding because it's child-free? I, 27F, am due to get married to my partner, 28M, this summer. The situation is that my brother Josh, 32M, is refusing to come to the wedding, and I think he is being unreasonable and childish. Our wedding is going to be child-free, with no kids under the age of 13-ish. The youngest guest will be around 12 to 13 years old at the time of the wedding. My partner and I don't hate children, and we had multiple reasons for having our wedding this way. Me personally, I think that weddings are mostly boring, unenjoyable experiences from the POV of small children, so it's hardly surprising that they will act up. Josh has 2 kids aged 5, twins, and he has made many comments that we are selfish for having a child-free wedding and that if we aren't inviting his kids, he is not going. I can understand his perspective, but I think he's not making any effort to understand ours. When Josh got married 7 years ago, he and his wife also had a child-free wedding. Last weekend we attended a family party. It was someone's birthday, and some family members brought up the topic of my upcoming wedding. Josh scoffed the whole time and made a comment that he wouldn't know about it because he's excluded. His comments caused short awkward silences, but no one responded to them. Later, when I was talking to Josh alone, I told him he's still invited to the wedding and he and his wife can go or not. Those are his options, and him making snide comments aren't going to change the plans. He said that I'm alienating his children and that they will be very sad about this when they're older, and that they would love to be flower girls. I called him a hypocrite and told him to grow the hell up, and that was the end of the conversation. Our parents are now getting involved, and my dad told me that he and my stepmom will not be at the wedding if Josh isn't. I'm not close with him for unrelated reasons, and our relationship is rocky at best, so I just told him that's up to him. My mom is asking me to just make an exception for Josh's kids. She said that I'm acting like a narcissist and that we all have to make compromises sometimes. Am I the a-hole? P.S. Multiple people have been asking, so I'll add it to the post. Josh and I are 2 out of 7 kids. At the time of Josh's wedding, 3 of our siblings had young children/babies, and so did some of our step-siblings.
Am I the hole for breaking up with my girlfriend because she tried to teach me a lesson? My ex-girlfriend 25F went out with some friends last weekend. I usually wait up and pick her up, or at least make sure she got to her apartment safe before I go to bed. But I had a flu and kept falling in and out of sleep that night. When I woke up randomly at like 4 a.m., I saw 3 missed calls from her. I called her back and she wasn't answering. I called her friends and the calls weren't going through. I started panicking and thinking the worst. I go to her apartment and she isn't there. I go to the bar she said she would be at, but it was closed by the time I got there. It was the worst couple of hours ever. I'm quite an anxious person, so those few hours were terrible. At around 1 p.m. that day, After I was running around town like a madman looking for her since 4 a.m., she calls me. She says she slept over at her friend's house. She shares the location with me and I go over. She looked like she was in a good mood and just smiling at me. I asked her what the hell happened and why she wasn't answering my calls and why she was here. She said she wanted to teach me a lesson about not answering her calls in the middle of the night when she could have been in danger, and wanted to scare me a bit. So she didn't answer my calls and asked her friends to block my number. I felt like a cartoon with steam coming out of its ears. I've never felt anger like that in my life. I guess I just didn't think an adult could be that childish. I didn't even hesitate in breaking up with her immediately and going home. She was blowing up my phone, asking if I was serious and if this is all it took for me to end our otherwise perfect relationship. She's right about it being nearly perfect, but the fact that she was willing to put me through distress to teach me a lesson shows that she isn't the kind of person I want to be with. My brothers are saying what she did wasn't cool, but I'm overreacting by breaking up with her. Am I the hole here?
Am I the a hole for breaking out my cheerleading uniform? I think I messed up last weekend, and I would appreciate honest opinions. My husband 33M and I 29F attended a gathering at my parents' home on Saturday for my son's birthday. My brother and sister and their families were there, as were my husband's two sisters and their families. We all live in the same area. The conversation at one point turned to high school, and I impulsively thought I'd surprise the group by sneaking to the basement and digging out my old cheerleading uniform, which was stored in a closet in my old room. I tried it on and it still fit barely, but still, I came back upstairs and did a little ta-da. There were some laughs and jokes, all in good fun. I wore it during the party for probably 20 minutes total, then went back down and changed. Well, I've learned that one of my husband's sisters and my own sister were not pleased at my little stunt. They both have made snide comments to the effect that I was showing off inappropriately shirt, skirt, etc. My husband's sister even made a rude sort of sexual comment to him about it via text. It was spur of the moment, but was I out of line? I am feeling very sheepish about this. Am I the a hole?
Am I the a-hole for breaking up with my boyfriend over a video call while having facts? Okay, this might be theatrical, but it's true. Me and my boyfriend were together for 3 years, but recently I found out that for the past whole year he had been cheating on me with a mutual acquaintance. That other girl didn't know that my boyfriend was still committed to me, and she was under the impression that we had broken up already. She got to know about me being the girlfriend through another mutual friend. And when she got to know about this, she reached out to me first before going to my boyfriend and taking up the matter with him. I was heartbroken initially and felt like a fool. It had been over a year since this had been going on, and so I decided to take revenge. After a week of mourning and ignoring my pathetic boyfriend, I decided to dump him in a drastic fashion. I reached out to one of my exes, one of the more decent ones, who was available at the time and was in town. I called him over to hook up. And while we were at it, I video called my boyfriend to break the news. He was flabbergasted, but I definitely cherished the look on his face. But since then, I've been wondering that I was no better than him maybe, and that I shouldn't have pulled this off.
I'm confused.
Am I the a-hole here?
Am I the a-hole for telling my son's fiancé that I don't like him? My son 25M used to get bullied a lot in middle and halfway through high school by his now fiancé, Ray 25M. I remember my son would come home every day crying because of how badly Ray would treat him. No matter how many times I went to the school, Ray's behavior never seemed to change. The final straw was when my son came home in full-on tears and started begging me to change schools. My son told me that during class, Ray was making fun of his mom and brother's deaths. This pissed me off. I went to the school the next day and demanded to have a meeting with the principal and with the teacher whose class my son was in at the time. Luckily, the teacher was able to confirm what Ray said along with multiple witnesses from the students who were in the class during that time. Long story short, this caused Ray to be suspended from school, and I enrolled my son in a different school from the middle of sophomore year to his senior year. My son seemed happy and started making more friends because he wasn't getting picked on every damn day. When my son graduated, he decided to go to college out of state. He told me that he wanted to do this so he could start fresh and try to be more outgoing. Anyway, I was not informed that Ray went to the school too until my son was 21 and told me that he finally wanted me to meet his boyfriend. I was excited as he always talked about his boyfriend but was very minimal. At the time he wanted to introduce me to him. They had already been dating for 1.5 years. My son came home with his boyfriend for Christmas break and I was finally introduced to him. When I saw my son walk through the door I was happy, but my happiness faded away when I saw Ray. I asked my son why he would bring that boy to my house, and he told me that he just wanted me to meet Ray and that he had changed and apologized for his behavior. I told him that I didn't give a damn about his changed behavior and that I wanted him gone. My son started begging me to at least give them a chance because he's starting to like Ray and he wants me to meet the nice side of him. I tried my best to be nice to Ray, but looking back I honestly was not on my best behavior and was not nice to him. But parents make mistakes. Since then, I've been trying my hardest to be civil towards him, and it's hard because whenever he speaks I just get annoyed. My son started to commend me for finally being nice to Ray, and in February of 23 my son finally told me that Ray proposed to him. I was so upset because I've been praying for them to break up, but it seemed that my prayers were never answered. I still don't understand why my son would even consider marrying Ray after everything he put him through, and it still makes me upset. The problem is yesterday my son and Ray came over to my house, and after a while, my son left because he had to go to the bank and for some odd reason Ray's ass decided to stay. When my son left I just started watching TV and Ray and I were sitting in silence. Then Ray started speaking to me, and he started talking about his wedding coming up and thanked me for paying for it. I told him it was no problem, and then I started watching TV again. We sat in silence again until he asked me if he could ask me a question. I told him that he could, and then he told me that he feels like I dislike him, which was not a question, so that just pissed me off again. I told him that he was feeling correct and that I don't like him at all. He then asked me if I ever will, and I told him that I doubt it. After that, he kinda left me alone and we just sat in silence until my son finally came back. Cut to later that night, a couple of hours after my son and Ray had left. My son called me crying and told me that I hurt Ray's feelings by what I said. He told me that it was fucked up, and that he just wants us to get along. He said that he was past everything that was done to him, and he just wants me to be happy for him. I told him that I was sorry for making him cry as I didn't intend it, but I told him that I don't like Ray and I probably never will. I told him that I can't forget everything he's done. I told him that I was the one who watched him come home and cry every fucking day because of him, and he had to move schools just to get away from him. I told him that he deserves way better than Ray, and I'm honestly upset that he's marrying him. I told him that if it'll make him feel better I'll talk to Ray and apologize to him. He told me that it would, and he gave the phone to Ray and I practically had to lie and tell him that I was sorry for hurting his feelings and that I like him as a person and that I'm glad he's marrying my son because he makes him happy. Everything I said was a lie and I only said it to make my son happy. I'm fucking mad. Although I apologized, I still don't think I did anything wrong because I only told him what he asked. Am I the a-hole here?